Hello, friends. Welcome to the third part of the beautiful module on Thirst for Knowledge Introduction. Well, this is the age of knowledge, a knowledge explosion, really. And the subject of knowledge, thirst for knowledge, is definitely connected to the hearts of all of us. And definitely we all want to increase that force which is within us, in fact, which is a moral force, to become more thirsty for knowledge and absorb knowledge. But what knowledge, how to do it, that's what we are discussing in these sessions. I hope it's useful to you. Let's have a quick recap about the last session that we had. We discussed that whether education system, the way it is today, does it need any change and reformation so that the students and the learners become generators of knowledge, not just repeating what already is there, but they can generate new knowledge. They can, propagate new knowledge. They can apply new knowledge so that they're being passive listeners, that attitude, that the status will change. So what changes we discussed education system should undergo? We also discussed that there are two traps in front of us. One is arrogance, one is self-righteousness. And when we are in the process of generating knowledge, it is quite possible that we can fall into these two traps. We become arrogant or we become self-righteous. So what should we do that we don't fall into these two traps? And then we also discussed that we face many challenges in our life to separate truth from falsehood in our daily life. In fact, this topic we discussed even in the last module, that we are so much surrounded by false advertisements, commercial, political. And if we are unable to distinguish truth from falsehood, well, we may land up following, we will land up supporting some false information, and then we'll be in trouble because that will take us away out of the straight path. We may land up doing things which are against our moral values. So we need to be able to distinguish truth from falsehood. Now, let me ask two questions that will create kind of context for us to discuss what we are going to, discuss in this session. The first question I'd like to ask is about superstitions and vain imaginings, because both of them can influence our understanding. So how can we overcome them so we don't become victims to superstitions, to vain imaginings? And then the second question that I'd like to ask you is, what are other types of knowledge that we need to seek? We have already discussed a few types of knowledge. So what are other types of knowledge we need to seek, we need to acquire to be able to fulfill our twofold moral purpose? Because as we discussed in the first module, to become capable, of course, we need knowledge. So what are those types of knowledges that we need? Now, as we just mentioned, one more challenge that we have in front of us is to shatter the monuments of superstitions and vain imaginings. They are really like monuments, some external superstitions, some internal, our own vain imaginings. People, for the most part, they delight in superstitions. They are very happy. People are happy to follow superstitions. Really, sometimes you are wondering that while there are such wonderful truths in front of you, which are obvious like the sun, still people follow superstitions. The reason is that they enjoy superstitions. And they also cling to their vain imaginings, the things that they imagine to be true, and they cling to it, they hold it. Therefore, true understanding requires tearing away these veils of superstitions, veils of vain imaginings that block our vision to see the truth. Well, we are all quite familiar with several different superstitions that are commonly observed in the society. A few examples are, suppose, evil eye. Oh my God, sometimes even very educated and very, enlightened people, you hear them, they're afraid of evil eye. So they think that they should do something, that evil eye will not affect them, will not affect their family, will not affect their children. What is that power in the eye that can cause evil to somebody? It's just in our own mind, Evil eye is our own mind, that if we think that, then we'll harm ourselves. Other superstitions, for example, witchcraft. There are some rituals that if you don't perform, then God's wrath will come on you. Well, some people say that. Or exclusion of women from ceremonies because of this or that, they are impure or whatever, baseless reasons that people give. There are also other superstitions against women. I think women have been really soft target for centuries. This is time now to change it. But there are other superstitions and other useless imaginings that we seldom don't think about them. They are there, but we even sometimes don't consider them as superstitions and vain imaginings. For example, one is gross materialism. That means to think and to believe that materialism is the most important thing that one should pursue in his life. Be it earning more wealth, be it possessing more material goods, be it thinking that we human beings are just physical and we have to be after our pleasures and our comforts. These are all different shades of gross materialism. And this is truly a superstition. To believe that materialism gives us happiness, of course it is a superstition. We discussed yesterday, it's like mirage. The more you acquire, the more happiness goes away from you. And you run after it again, because it's a mirage. It's not a true happiness. Another gross superstition is attachment to worldly things. A very simple habit that many people have is that if you don't visit the mall, as often as you think you should, you feel something is missing in your life is incomplete because you did not go and buy something. And often we buy things that we even don't need them. Another superstition is the fears and anxieties that distract our minds, or the pleasures and dissipations that fill our time. Of course, these are because there's no truth in them, And of course, the prejudices and animosities that darken our outlook. So, these are the kind of superstitions because there is no truth in them. There is no scientific basis. You cannot prove them. We said knowledge is what, you can prove it, but none of these can be proved. So let me put a question to you, dear learners, that in what ways do these superstitions and vain imaginings influence our understanding? First. And secondly, how can we overcome them? We make ourselves free from them. Please take 4 minutes time, discuss with your learning partner, and then we'll continue. 4 minutes. Mrs. Saili, can I request you please comment on this, how these superstitions influence us? How can we, get rid of those influences or not be influenced by them?
Yes, sir, certainly. First of all, we need to understand what are superstitions and these vain imaginings. So basically, superstitions are unscientific. There is no scientific base behind them and do not conform to the logical ways of acquisition of knowledge. We have been
Absolutely.
discussing in last two sessions about acquisition of knowledge and sources of knowledge. So they are nowhere near to the logical explanation for these superstitions basically. So superstition prevent the true knowledge from reaching to us.
Mhm.
Because what is there, reality does not reach to us because the superstitions, they actually block the truth.
Oh my God, yes,
So
you're right.
that's really a very wrong thing which is happening actually. They incite fear and ultimately force us to do things that may be against beauty and our thirst for truth. Because
Very
we,
true.
as human beings, we want to know the truth, and of course we want to do certain deeds which are beautiful, but then superstitions take us away from both these important aspects actually.
No, very often, I'm sorry for that, very often we see superstitions really prevail, mostly among the people who are not educated. Although, yes, there are some.
I was just going
yes,
to
that.
say the same
So
thing.
you just wonder, really,
Yes, yes.
how educated people,
Right.
hmm.
So actually, little while ago you have mentioned certain superstitions, and there you have mentioned superstitions against women.
Mhm.
And I have personally have witnessed certain superstitions against women done by educated people.
Very sad.
So
very
it
sad.
is really sad that how superstitions, and then we realize that superstitions actually could be, they are actually, not could be, man-made.
Mhm.
So basically, then somebody's, maybe it's against prejudices, is maybe to create discrimination also, superstitions get created and then they are followed traditionally
Mhm.
for many years. It could also happen, basically. So superstitions weaken you mentally and emotionally because they have really bad impact. For example, the women's example that we have taken, just to keep them away from traditional, ceremonies or even touching a baby, newborn baby.
Mhm.
These kind of things which are unnatural, which do not have any scientific support that that particular lady touching that baby, something is going to happen. So, this is all mentally, they weaken us mentally and emotionally. And the reality around you becomes a delusion. And you feel only by following certain things, success can be achieved. So this is also a kind of superstition that if I do certain things, then only, if I pray on such and such day, on at such and such time, then only I'll be successful in my life.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, these kind of superstition fears also get created and they are spread.
Just man-made without any basis.
Yes, and no logical reasoning
no reason
behind it.
Very
Actually.
true.
So, your second question was, how can we overcome that?
That's
So
right.
that's really important. So first of all, we need to find out the root of this superstition.
Mhm.
That means what has led to making some superstition, and not blindly just follow something which is there and somebody else is following. Maybe your closest person that who is close to you is following. So that's the reason why you start following it, or your family members are following. But that should not be the approach. The approach should be to find out what is the root cause for
Very
it.
true.
Then, of course, examine if there is any scientific or logical reason behind it, or it is just a vain imagining of
Yes.
something or somebody, basically. Then counter the fear that it may instill in you or others. So, as I said a little while ago, that we feel that only by doing certain things, certain success is going to happen, or certain good things are going to come into your life. So, this is kind of a fear. So, it is not like that. You work towards it. You work towards your success. You work towards what you really wish in life. And then this kind of fear will never come.
Very
Because
true.
you exactly know which path you need to follow.
Yeah, so we have our own will,
Exactly, sir.
Why should we be influenced by something
Right.
which is not there?
Absolutely.
Yes. Okay.
Absolutely. Then knowingly and unknowingly do not support and promote any superstition. Even in newspaper, sometimes it happens that you open the newspaper and there's particular news that you want to go on that page and see something which should be there. And one day it is not printed over there. So you feel very much
Okay.
that something wrong is going to happen to me in this day. So,
Yes.
and then you start behaving that way. So do not promote, do not support these kind of thoughts, basically. stop rooting against superstition and propagate rational behavior, basically. So these are some of the things that we can do to overcome superstition.
Very nice. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so
Yes.
much. I think this can be again a good line of service
Yes.
that our dear learners can take to really
Very much.
investigate and to sort of try to
Right.
reduce the superstitions that are prevailing in their own families or
Absolutely.
maybe among their
Yes.
own circles of influence.
Yes.
Now, we have discussed earlier, friends, that humanity has left behind the period of its childhood and now is passing through the period of its adolescence. Means collective life of mankind does not resemble now the life of a child.
Right.
It's more resembling the life of an adolescent who is certainly the intellect is more sharp, the powers are more obvious, and many other characteristics that you see in an adolescent we can see now around us in this.
Yes.
So we are really passing through that, the collective adolescence of the humanity. And because of that, a lot of changes are to take place so that we become adult, just like an adolescent who has to undergo many changes to reach adulthood. So collectively also we have to undergo changes to become mature, to become mature. So although the knowledge humanity has generated over many centuries should not be ignored, in the same way that a child does not throw away the abilities and what he has learned in the childhood, of course that is the foundation. Yet it's difficult to imagine that one can manage his life as an adult by using the fairy tales he enjoyed as a child. Or fairy tales were that time, for that time. Now you are an adult. It is said that the playthings of the childhood and infancy no longer satisfy or interest the adult mind. Hence, our thirst for knowledge should develop our intellectual abilities in a way as to generate and acquire such knowledge that help today's civilization to advance. So we really need to be concerned with today, what is required today. And for that, we have to acquire knowledge so that we can help the better passage of humanity from the stage of adolescence to adulthood. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mrs. Saban. Thank you, Mrs. Saini, for your
Thank you.
input. Thank you.